A warm welcome to Diski Talk with Luyolo. If you're tuning in for the very first time, I do ask that you please subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you've been a part of this journey, I hope you thoroughly enjoy this episode. So, on today's episode, I discuss all things Caf Confederations Cup quarterfinal as I have a post-match analysis of Simba versus Orlando Pirates, which ended 1-0 in favor of Simba. So, coming up into this tactical post-match analysis then, the red side will represent Simba and then the blue side will represent Orlando Pirates. So, when you have a look at Simba then, they did line up in a 4-2-3-1 formation. And then when you have a look then at the goalkeeper, they did start with Manula in goals. And then at left back, they did start with Muhammad, who is also their captain as well. And when you have a look at him then, he did enjoy a high and wide position throughout the game, because then Simba did have the lion's share of possession throughout the game. And when you have a look at him then, he was looking then to offer that width on the left-hand side and also then deliver those crosses. And then when you have a look at the two centre-backs, they did start with Wawa and with Baka as well. And then as the right back, they did have Kapombe. And Kapombe also enjoyed a very high and wide position on the right-hand side for this Simba side. So what Simba then were looking to do then with their fullbacks was looking then to occupy those advanced pockets of space within vertical zone 1 on the left wide channel and then vertical zone 5 on the right wide channel. And Kapombe then is also the player then who did manage to get that goal through a penalty where then he finished off and he managed to send Ofori the wrong way. And then moving on then right along within the heart of midfield, they did start with Mkude and Luanga as well. And these two then were quite instrumental with regards to how they controlled the tempo of the game and how then they were looking to keep possession. I just think though that at times they did struggle with regards to shifting the ball quickly, especially considering then that Orlando Pirates did adopt a 4-4-2 low block as a defensive scheme. And this Simba side, especially in the first half, they really struggle then to break them down. And what becomes key then when you are playing against a low block is how you shift the ball within the heart of midfield. So at times they did have those very good passes, and they were able then to circulate the ball well. It's just then that they just couldn't find those progressive, penetrative passes, which then were looking then to break the opposition lines of Orlando Pirates. And I just think that that was the only issue on the day from this midfield too. However, I think that they were also very solid within the heart of midfield. And within the second half, Biola did come on, and I think then he really did add that spark within the heart of midfield, especially considering then how he was finding those penetrative and those progressive passes as well. And then when you move on then, let's just move them up. When you move on then right along and have a look at the three behind the striker, on the left-hand side, they did start with Bernard Morrison. And when you have a look at Bernard Morrison, this is a player then who previously did play for Orlando Pirates. So coming up into this encounter, he was always looking then to ensure that he does manage then to prove a point, especially then considering then that he did play for this Orlando Pirates side. And when you have a look at Bernard Morrison, he did have a couple of very good moments in the game, and especially then when you consider how then he wins that penalty for this Simba side. So Bernard Morrison then does get the ball in that 1v1 situation with Nyauza. He manages to beat Nyauza. He goes past him, drifts into the box. Jele comes across and then he fouls him for the penalty. And then when you have a look then at the other two, you did then have Sako, and then you did have Banda as well. And when you have a look at this three, they were quite a fluid three behind the striker with regards then to the pockets of space that they would occupy and how then they were looking then to drift into different pockets of space, especially considering then that this Orlando Pirates side were very resolute. And the shape then basically that we saw from Orlando Pirates, it was then a 4-4-2. So let's just put it into perspective. So it was a very narrow 4-4-2 low block. That was the defensive scheme that Orlando Pirates went with. So when you have a look at these three, they were quite key then in trying to create chances for this Simba side and trying to break down that low block. But, you know, at times they really did struggle, especially then when you look at Banda, who just couldn't grow into the game, and you have a look at Sako. I think that when you have a look at Sako, he's a very quick and very skillful player. It's just that at times I felt that he had one touch too many, and he just couldn't get that goal and create those clear-cut chances for this Simba side. And then up front, they did start with Magulu, and when you have a look at him, then he is a presence, so he does look to hold the ball up for this Simba side, and he does then look to give them that aerial threat and that presence. However, on the day, he just couldn't get any clear-cut chances, and also then considering how well Jelle did in those 1v1 aerial duels against him. So overall then, when you have a look at Simba, this was their offensive scheme, as they did go with a very, very aggressive scheme, especially when you consider then that at times it was somewhat of a 2-2-6 shape in a sense, especially then when you had Morrison looking to tuck in, you had Banda tucking in, you had Sako there. At times they'd look to interchange, and then you had the fullbacks high and wide, and even then you'd had the midfielders looking to push up. So a lot of the times then they did play very risky in that sense, because they were trying then to get that goal. However, within the first half, Orlando Pirates were very resolute with regards then to how they managed the space laterally and vertically with regards to their low block, and they just didn't give this Simba side a lot of opportunities and a lot of space, especially in behind and in between the lines as well. And overall then, Simba then did manage to get that goal where they scored a penalty, and yeah, so they do get that one goal, and going then into the second leg, they do have that one goal advantage. It's going to be very interesting with regards to how they look to impose themselves within the second leg. And then when you have a look at Orlando Pirates, so because then Orlando Pirates spent most of the game within this situation, and they were deep in their own half, I won't shift them. We'll have a look at them then from this perspective. So when you have a look at Orlando Pirates then, in goals, they did start with Richard Ofori. And then at right back, you had Bandile Shandu, you had Nyauza, you had Jelle, and then you had Innocent Mayela. And then when you have a look at it then, within the heart of midfield, they had Musele, they had Munare, and then off the right-hand side, you did then have Undlovu. Off the left-hand side, you had Hoto, and then you had Lamini, and then you had Pepra as well. When you have a look at this Orlando Pirates side, I just think that as much as they did well with regards to their low block and their defensive structure and just ensuring then that Simba couldn't get that second and third goal. However, when you look at the game holistically, I think they really struggled to get out of their own half. And what becomes key then with regards to playing then with the low block is that you're obviously then looking then to transition offensively and look to hit the opposition on the counter attack. However, with Orlando Pirates, they really, really struggled with that, especially then considering then that they had Pepra and they had Lamini. I just think that they had a very poor performance on the day. Lamini lost a lot of balls. He couldn't give Orlando Pirates that presence within those tight pockets of space. He couldn't hold the ball up and ensure then that he can play that pass that could get Orlando Pirates out of their half. And then when you look at Pepra then, I just think that he was very poor with regards to his first touch. And also then when you look at some of the opportunities that Orlando Pirates were able to fashion, you know, so it would be those opportunities where Pepra would get the ball around there a few times and he just couldn't make it stick. And the problem then when you do have a player who isn't able then to hold the ball up, especially then in these situations, that it becomes very, very difficult for you guys to progress out of your half. And I think from that perspective, Orlando Pirates really, really struggled. And what becomes key then is that it's either you have a striker then who's very good at hold-up play with regards to his physicality, which then would aid your team with regards to being able to progress up the pitch, or you have speed. Now, when you have a look at Orlando Pirates, and you consider that they started with Ndlovu, they started with Dlamini, and they have Pepra. These three don't really have that speed to get in behind and get Orlando Pirates out of their half. Hotto does. However, a lot of the times when Orlando Pirates won the ball and they were looking then to transition offensively to hit the Simba side on the counter attack, Hotto was in very deep pockets. So the ground then he has to cover becomes a lot. And I just think that going into second half, I just think that Loch, Makaringe and Lipasa should have been introduced then, especially then for Ndlovu, Dlamini and Pepra as well, because they do have that qualitative superiority as individuals, especially then in advanced pockets of space. When you look at Loch, he could give you that speed going in behind, and he's also got an eye for goal as well. When you look at Lipasa, he is very strong, he's got a good first touch, he can hold the ball up, and he's very quick, so he can go in behind, and at times he can look to sort of drop into those central pockets of space and look then to find those penetrative passes, because Orlando Pirates at times they did have a couple of good moments. It's just that within the final third they lacked that quality to get the goal. So when you have a look at the overall scope of the game, it does end 1-0 in favor of Simba, where then they did score a penalty that was caused by Uhepi Tele having to cover for Nyauza. Simba kept the lion's share of possession. However, they couldn't then fashion clear-cut chances throughout the game. It was then a very tight game, and Orlando Pirates ensured that they minimized the amount of opportunities that this Simba side had. When you have a look at Orlando Pirates then, they sat very deep within their own half. They struggled to come out, and they just lack quality then with regards to them looking to transition offensively, and they lack quality with regards to their counter-attacks, because when they did have those situations, they just didn't have enough speed, and they also didn't have enough quality with regards to holding up the ball and ensuring they could get out of their own half. So when we do then go into the second leg, it is advantage Simba, and it does make it a very interesting proposition. However, I do think that at the end of the day, qualitative superiority shall reign supreme in Johannesburg, where I see Simba winning the encounter and then advancing to the semi-finals of the Caf Confederations Cup. However, ladies and gentlemen, do let me at home, what do you make of this encounter, and where do you think Orlando Pirates stand with regards to the Caf Confederations Cup? Thank you very much for tuning in to yet another special episode of Diski Talk with Luyolo. Signing out.